So, you got yourself a copy of Resident Evil 9. Perhaps you're loyal to the series, or perhaps you saw one of the many positive reviews online and decided to check out the game for yourself. However, maybe you are like me, and maybe when you beat the game, you realize that the gameplay was only kind of average, and that the story was absolutely terrible. But why is that? Well, let's start from the beginning. Our main character for Resident Evil 9 is Grace Ashcroft, daughter of Alyssa Ashcroft, who was playable in Resident Evil Outbreak, which was an online game for PS2. So I would have been about 2 when that came out, so I was not able to play that. However, I have heard that Alyssa is a fan favorite character. So, let's hope that she's given a lot of respect and that she's used very often in the game to help out Grace, as she is her daughter. Because that's what you would want to happen. Grace works in the FBI, as we see that she is in an FBI field office. And her boss calls her into his office. And the first thing we really see of her is that she is very clumsy, in that she picks up a file from her desk to take it into his office, and she instantly knocks over a whole stack of papers, that sure is character development, alright. That is not just using the most obvious tropes, but it is using that. You see, she wears glasses, therefore she is at least somewhat nerdy, and therefore is clumsy. She's like all the nerds in the audience, like me, I wear glasses. Anyway, the boss tells you that there has been a murder in Wrenwood. It's a town. Wrenwood is a town, that's what it is. And it happened at a hotel. It's a murder hotel. Specifically, the hotel where Alyssa was killed at. And they tell you this through just exposition. They don't show you it. It's just, well, they do show you it later, but for now it's just exposition. And it's not very good exposition. It's just kind of like, well, Grace, I know that you know this already, but your mother was killed in that hotel, that murder hotel, and we need you to go there because you're such a good technical analyst in the FBI. One thing is that, well, I guess Alyssa won't be in the game that much, so that's too bad for the fans who really liked Alyssa in Resident Evil Outbreak. But let's just hope that she's given a very respectable end to her story, a very respectable death, because that's what you want for fan favorite characters, isn't it? Right? But we'll get into that. It's very weird that your boss wants to send you to this murder hotel because, it's where your mother was murdered, for one, and as we'll see later on, she was killed literally right in front of Grace. So that's very traumatic. And also, as we've seen, Grace is clumsy, but also she is very, very wimpy, to the point that once she is given the quest to go to this murder hotel, she just kind of shuts down. She stops speaking, she kind of does that every now and then. She just stops speaking, it's odd, but I would get it if her character arc were that she starts off wimpy and then by the end she gets all this courage, but as we'll see, that isn't quite how things play out. But anyway, we then see Grace just walking into a guy on the streets of Wrenwood, because that's where she is now. She accepted the mission. And this is where we get our first part of actual, real gameplay of video games, which means it should be very exciting, correct? So here, I have mapped out the actual in-game environment that you are able to go to. As you can see, it is very linear. And you might go, well, wait a minute, I played the game, and I saw a street. That was a whole street that I could go to, but no. You see, these are the buildings that are along the sidewalk that you're on. Because you start off on a sidewalk. And if you try to go backwards, which there's a whole sidewalk there, you could try to go backwards if you wanted to. But if you do, there it is. Then you just hit an invisible wall, and it gives you a tutorial for the quick turn, which lets you turn 180 degrees around. Which if you're in first person, which there's first person mode and then there's third person mode. And if you're in first person, then the quick turn makes more sense. But if you're in third person, then it's like, well, I can just flick the stick backwards. So it doesn't make as much sense in third person. But anyway, if you go backwards, you just hit an invisible wall and are told how to turn around. So I think that's a pretty clear message right there. You're supposed to not go that way. And then all this street down here, that's also an invisible wall. You can't go there at all. So really, you're just limited to a tunnel that you have to walk down every single time you start a new playthrough in this game. Isn't that exciting? So that's one point against replayability right there, and I'm going to keep track of those. That's one point against replayability, is you have to walk down this street where nothing happens. You just hold forward, and then you get to the cutscene, which I have so labeled here 3 times in a row, because I don't know. But I guess you can read these things right here. There are 2 things for you to read, but who cares about reading nowadays? But anyway, you walk straight forward, and then you hit your cutscene. In the cutscene itself, Grace walks up to this area that is blocked off by police stuff, and probably police tape is there, but a cop who's just waiting in his car walks up to her and says, "Hey, you can't go in there." And then she like stumbles to get her FBI thing out of her backpack. And I'm just like, well, wait a minute. Why was the guy waiting in his car if he's supposed to be blocking off this crime scene? This very recent crime scene, by the way. And Grace, again, acts like this person who just is barely able to speak. When she's given basic questions of what she thinks she'll find at this murder hotel and all that. And the cop is just a very chill dude. He's like, "Hey, do you think this is terrorism or whatever?" And she's just like, "Well, I don't know. I'll find more answers inside, good sir." But anyway, he just kind of points you in your direction. And then, well, he also describes the crime scene as an active crime scene, which, as far as I've looked up, an active crime scene should have a lot of officers and other people around it, because you're still looking for evidence and you're looking for who did it. So you're going to have a lot of people there, which, as we're going to see in a moment, there's no one there except Grace, which is just, it's weird. It feels like this game is very adverse to having you have a partner in it, like someone following alongside you, because once the cop just kind of points you down this alley that you have to go down, he just kind of disappears from the game, for a while at least. And I just feel like, well, maybe if we're investigating a murder scene and this cop knows something about the scene and maybe he's been there, then maybe he should follow us in there and, help us see what pieces of evidence are already there, what the police have found already. But no, he doesn't do that. He just kind of disappears. That's it for him. He's gone now. Until later, at least. So once the cutscene ends, this down here was the sidewalk you were on, and now you get to explore this alley, which has almost nothing in it. But hey, now you're able to run, and you're able to crouch, which you're given a crouch tutorial right there. You have to crouch under an object in order to move forward. How exciting. But then a crow scares you, and then you look up. It scares you in this area. If you're a scaredy cat, that is. If you're scared of crows. And then the crow kind of flies upward, and then you look upward, and there's tons of crows over there. Because crows swarm around dead things. Because it's a murder of crows, you see. It's thematically relevant. It's murder. But yeah, you just kind of go through this very basic alley with nothing in it. Nothing. And then you get into here, which is the actual murder hotel. So we are now here, and the inside is very dark. So this is where you're given your flashlight tutorial, which tells you can turn on and off your flashlight, which is, I think it's a very neat mechanic. However, it's not really used that much in the game. And by that, I mean, enemies don't really react to your flashlight at all. And I get that they're supposed to be mindless zombies. However, I feel like if they could see your flashlight while you're hiding maybe, and then pinpoint your location that way, then you would actually have incentive to sometimes turn off your flashlight. But as it is right now, your only real incentive to turn off the flashlight is if you want the game to be more atmospheric or not. And I don't know about you, but I want to see things. So I'm going to turn on my flashlight pretty much most of the time. But anyway, you go through there it is. You go through this dark hallway into the kitchen of the hotel, where you can open a drawer and find nothing. There are quite a few drawers in quite a few of these Resident Evil games that you just open up and there's nothing in there. And I'm just like, why? Why have the drawer there if there's nothing in it? I guess it's supposed to be like you're feeling like you're scavenging for things. But if I scavenge for something and it isn't there, then whatever. The point is, if I'm gonna look for something, if you're gonna play an animation of me opening a drawer, then there should be something in the drawer. Give me more items, games. But anyway, there's also a creepy little fridge with creepy meat stuff in it, which is something they also did in Resident Evil 7. Same dev team. And I think they also did it in Resident Evil 8. And that was all also in the intro of the game. And another thing they did in those other games is they have a creepy pot that you can look in and see creepy things. And I'm just like, why? Why are you using the same trick in Resident Evil 7, 8, and 9? Don't you want to get new tricks each time? Scare people in different ways? Mix it up a little? Well, as we'll see later on, this dev team very much likes copying not only what they did before, but what Resident Evil did before and what other horror games have done before. But we'll get into all that much later. So you get to this door right here, and this room is where Grace's mother Alyssa was murdered. And so you're given a cutscene where she has to really push herself to go into this room. And at this point, it's kind of getting a little ridiculous how many cutscenes there are. You start off on a cutscene, which I get, and then you're given just a hallway. Well, a sidewalk, but it might as well just be a hallway. That's just straight, and then you're given another cutscene, and then you're given an alley where you can do nothing except run and crawl. And then you're given another cutscene, and then there's just a lot of cutscenes in this opening segment that you have to skip through when you're on any playthrough except the first one, because you want to see the story on the first playthrough, don't you? So I guess that's that's kind of a point against replayability, but that's also kind of just a normal thing to have more cutscenes towards the start of the game. But anyway, in this room you can kind of investigate some random bits of evidence that are lying around, and then around here you can walk here and then a wire will just fall down from the ceiling for no reason, because this game wants to scare you at random times. It's a random scare moment. That's what I'm calling it. It's a random scare moment. Because you just walk here, a wire falls down, and it's like, ah, scary. And then if you want to, you can walk in here. This is where the body should be, the dead body, which you're supposed to investigate. But it's not here anymore. How mysterious. And then you turn to walk out of the bathroom, and oh no, a bucket is rolling over. Which means that some guy was probably staring at you, and in order to get the bucket to roll over. So Grace should really call for help right now, but as we will see, she is very adverse to do so. So next you go over here and you find a picture of Grace. Someone took a picture of Grace and put it up here, and on the back of the picture, it says, "Let's talk in room 204, and it gives you a key on the back of the picture. It's just taped there. And at this point, in real life, I would be like, I'm getting out of here immediately. However, Grace cannot get out of there because the door closes. The door to the kitchen closes, which means she cannot get out of there at all. Instead, she pulls out her gun and is like, oh no, what am I going to do? I know what you can do, Grace. You can call for help because you have your cell phone. And if it isn't charged, then you can open up a window and say, help. Help me now. I'm trapped in this building, because you're in the middle of a crowded city, Grace. That's what I would do if I were trapped in a building in the middle of a crowded city. I would call someone for help, or I would open a window and yell. But no, she just grabs her gun and is like, oh no, what am I gonna do? It's very, very silly. But the key that you're given, you won't believe this, is to this door. The key that you are given right here goes to the door that is right here. I get that you're trying to tutorialize the player still as to how to use objects. You find objects, you use them, but come on, that's a little basic, isn't it? Giving you the key right next to the door where you're supposed to use it at. Come on. But anyway, you go through this hallway, you come in here. There's a couple of places you can look around, but there isn't really much to find except for files you can read. If you like reading files, that's supposed to be stairs. Whenever you see lines like that, that's my stairs. But then we go from floor 1 up to floor 2, because they want us to go to room 204, which is gonna be on the second floor, because there's a 2 in the number, don't you know? And as we walk up here, we walk past a fire escape, which we can't get into. It's locked. And the key, believe it or not, is not in the same room as the fire escape. So then you're like, oh, there's this door, but it's wired shut. Someone strung wires together and put them on this door in order to keep it shut. So then you walk backwards and what's that? On this pool table over here? It's the key. Or rather, it's like snippers, wire snippers, so you can open the wires. And this, mind you, is the second time in this game already that they've given you the key to the door in the same room as the door. And yes, I'm calling wire snippers a key because it's a thing you use to open a door. It's a key. In utility, it is a key. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm going with. So then you just go down this, again, hallway with nothing in it. By the way, you have your gun. You can shoot your gun, but There is nothing to shoot your gun at so far. Not even one zombie. It's just an empty hotel. How exciting. But, you go into the room, and what do you find? But a radio is on. Ah, how spooky. And then on the bed, there are tons, and I mean dozens, if not hundreds, of pictures of Grace on this bed. And at this point, I would just be like, Grace, you've had several chances to call for help and get out of here. This is the moment where you just start breaking walls down, because this place is not safe for you. But, these pictures on this bed, one of them just so happens to trigger a flashback of 8 years ago when Grace and Alyssa were staying in this murder hotel. So Grace and Alyssa are sharing the same room in this murder hotel, which it isn't a murder hotel yet. Right now it's a regular hotel in 2018, because that's what 8 years ago would be in this scenario. And in real life too right now. But Grace is acting all bratty because she is currently a teenager, but her character model looks the exact same as her adult character model, and she has the exact same voice as her adult character model. So it just it just doesn't feel like she's a teenager. It feels like she is adult Grace, but 8 years ago, which is odd to say the least, given how bratty she is. Like, she is so bratty that she does not want to even pick up the phone that is next to her. She wants to let her mother get the phone, but then her mother is just like, no, you get the phone, Grace, because you're closer to it, you silly little Billy. So Grace picks up the phone, and the guy is like, Miss Ashcroft, and then she is like, yes, and then he hangs up. How creepy. So now whoever's trying to murder them knows that they're there. And Miss Ashcroft, when he said that, he was probably referring to Alyssa and not Grace, because that's the one he's trying to murder right now. So then all the lights go off, and then Alyssa is like, we gotta get out of here right now. And Grace is like, what are you doing? This is so ridiculous, mother. And Alyssa is like, that is a good story for another time. As in, she just does not care to tell you at all why she's worried or what's going on. She's just like, we gotta get out of here. So Grace just kind of follows along. And technically, this is gameplay in the sense that you can follow behind Alyssa, but that's literally all that you can do. You cannot pick up anything. You cannot look anywhere. You can't shoot any guns. Well, you can look places, but you know what I mean. You can't open things and look inside things. You can't shoot guns. You can't heal. It's just pretty much you're walking forward again. And so you follow Alyssa down the stairs to the lobby, and you find a hotel worker man. And he's a very nice fellow. He is a very nice fellow. And then he walks by, he's like, oh, I'm sorry for all this trouble that we've given you with the lights going out and all. We're trying to get it worked out. And then he's murdered by the zombie assassin who is sent for Alyssa. And then Alyssa shoots the zombie assassin and makes him fall into a different room, and then instead of making sure he's dead by like double or triple tapping him, she just closes him in that room. And then what happens next is very odd. Alyssa is like, I have this thing that is filled with important documents. Therefore, I will hide it behind this painting in this room. Now, you are shown this so that you will, after the flashback is over, go downstairs and remove the painting, or at least look behind it, and find her very important documents that are in this folder that she leaves behind this painting. However, why is Alyssa leaving this thing behind this painting? She has no idea that she is about to die. And as far as she knows, she's just gonna get out of this murder hotel with Grace. And then they're gonna go on and live their own happy lives together. So there is no reason to leave this, as we will see, vitally important information behind this painting, because as far as Alyssa is aware, she will never come back to this hotel because someone is trying to murder her here. So it's just a very odd move. But anyway, you then go into the room where Alyssa is supposed to be murdered, and then Grace calls the police because as she puts it, there have been murders at the hotel. Murders being the murder of the hotel worker and the murder of the zombie assassin by her mother, which her saying it was murders implies that her mother is a murderer for using self-defense against that one zombie who is literally trying to kill her daughter. Like literally, the zombie assassin, after killing the guy, tries to use the knife against Alyssa. Or at least the machete. I think it's a machete. But, yeah, Grace is not very grateful for her mother saving her life in this scenario. But anyway, her mother tries to calm her down. Also, the police call lasts a very short amount of time. I'm pretty sure that in actual police calls, you're supposed to call them and then remain on the line until they actually get there. But in this scenario, she just calls and says, "There's been murders here," and then she hangs up, which is not how that's supposed to go as far as I know. But anyway, Alyssa is trying to calm down Grace because she's freaking out. She's like, "Oh no, I'm gonna die, I'm gonna throw up." And then Grace tries to run for the exit, and then so these two are positioned like this, let's say. Or let's say they're this. These are people. The fingers are people. So they're positioned like this. And Alyssa is trying to help Grace calm down. She's hugging her, and then Grace runs for the exit. This is Grace. Grace runs for the exit, and then Alyssa turns around to Grace, and then says something, and then Grace turns around to Alyssa, and then the zombie assassin appears behind Alyssa and puts his machete in her throat. And I'm just like, well, wait a minute. You two were facing this way before. So Alyssa, whichever one it is, was looking the way of the zombie assassin not too long ago, and yet he was able to just like teleport behind her while they were in the 2 seconds that they were looking away from him and kill her, which is, and also he just makes zero sound, which I would think I would hear a zombie assassin just stumbling his way towards me. But yeah, that's how Alyssa dies. A zombie assassin teleports behind her and sticks a machete in her throat. Which is so, it's so ridiculously stupid, and you would just expect a fan favorite character to get a more ceremonious death. Something that would make a lot of sense, something that would show them as a hero, especially when they have survived a zombie outbreak before. Alyssa should know her way around dealing with the zombies that are all around you. But this one zombie assassin, he was just too sneaky, I suppose. But anyway, very bad character deaths aside, the zombie assassin then stumbles onto an oil lamp, which I don't know why there's an oil lamp in this modern hotel in 2018 when we've seen before that the hotel workers have flashlights, so why is there an oil lamp? I just find that very odd. But he knocks over the oil lamp onto himself because the zombie assassin is now dead because of the bullet wounds that he got before. And this starts a fire, which totally engulfs the zombie assassin, which means there's no evidence of who the murderer was. How lucky, how incredibly lucky for the bad guys, that is. Because as we'll see later on, the bad guys of this game actually sent that zombie assassin after Alyssa. And they literally say in a document that it was very lucky that the fire started. And that it consumed all the evidence. Yeah, that's what you want, right? People getting very, very lucky in your story. Yeah. But anyway, then Grace grieves over her mother, and the acting is very good. Whenever Grace is, like, showing her sad side, the acting is very, very good. But we're not here to judge acting, we're here to judge storytelling. And acting and storytelling are two very different things. So let's just stick to the storytelling and not the acting ability, because it is sometimes very high. The flames are encroaching towards Grace, and we're not shown how she gets out of this building. 1 second we just see her grieving over her mother while the flames are running towards her, you know, as flames run. And then we just see modern day Grace, who's just out of there. We don't see how she got out, but I guess she got out the way that she got in the modern day, which is through the exit from the kitchen. But that doesn't matter anymore. For what we see is that Grace is, for some reason, blames herself for her mother's death, which I don't see how you would blame yourself when a zombie assassin killed her, but Grace blames herself, so that's something. So now, a phone on the bed full of pictures from before, because we're in the modern day now. There's a phone on the bed of pictures, which rings, and Grace, for some reason, not only answers the phone, but talks into the phone, letting whoever the villain is know that she is in the murder hotel. Grace is not the brightest bulb in the pack. But then the guy just says nothing and hangs up. And you are reminded, literally twice in a row, that there was a secret behind that painting downstairs, and that you need to go get it. Which is, they do not think highly of the player's intelligence in this game. That's what I'm saying, because why remind you twice in a row? Why put keys right next to the door where you can use them if they think highly of the player? But anyway, if you want to, you can go into the bathroom and open up a shower curtain, but there's literally nothing behind there. I thought there'd be a scare there, but I guess they subverted my expectations by giving me literally nothing. Not even something I can loot or anything. But then you go back into the hallway, and these are glass doors. There's 2 glass doors right here. And these were the doors that were tied together, but you bit through them with the wire cutters. And through the glass doors, you see a figure walking by. How spooky! However, no matter how fast you go to get through these doors, you will never see that figure on the other side of these doors, because he just, like, I guess gets deleted from the game after he walks by the doors. And this is another trick that they tried before in at least Resident Evil 7, and maybe 8, but I'm not as sure about that one in my memory. But they did this in Resident Evil 7 also, and in that one, he also disappears. So they just very, very much like doing the same tricks over and over again. And one trick that they also did over again is this painting thing, where you see something in something that happened before that gives you the key to check a place that lets you go forward with the story. That also happened in Resident Evil 7, where you find a tape and then you can play it in this tape player, because that's where you play tapes. And that shows you that there's a secret passage somewhere in the house, and then you can use that secret passage to move forward with the story. It's the same thing design-wise as this is, but this one is a little more silly because you just see a photo that activates your memory, which I don't know how the villain expected Grace to meet him, because the villain, as we will see, is up the fire escape, which is locked, and the key is not in any straightforward place that you would actually check for the key. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So you go downstairs, which is, where is it? It's all the way over here. That's the downstairs. And then you check the painting, which is on that wall. And would you have it? Would you believe it? Somehow, Alyssa's very important thing is still behind that painting, despite the mountains of police that have very likely been through this area, and FBI agents, and the fire that happened in this area. But Alyssa's very important things are still in this folder behind the painting. Which is, it's just very goofy that it is. That is what it is. It is very goofy, it is. So you find a little journal that doesn't really say much. It says that, oh, someone was stalking Alyssa before she was murdered. And then you find this disc, and this disc is very highly important, but only in the last 5% of the game. Because that's when you find out what is on the disc. But anyway, once you find that, the cop shows back up. But oh no, he has been stung by something, and he turns into a zombie before Grace, while she just kind of stands there. She has a gun, by the way. And this is a world where there have been many zombie outbreaks, but she just stands there while he turns. And then he kind of roars at her, because that's what all scary monsters in these horror things have to do. They have to roar at you. She is so scared that she gets her sleeve caught on a luggage cart that's right about there. And the cop has a shotgun. So now you get, I guess, technically gameplay where you have to hold down a button while dodging left to right the cop's shotgun blasts. But it's not very much of gameplay, is it? Where you just have to hold down a button and just kind of sway your joystick left to right. That's not very much gameplay. It's more of a cutscene than it is gameplay, that's what I say. But then she gets herself free, and she pushes the luggage cart onto the zombie cop. And would you happen to know it, in one of those jackets on the luggage cart, there just so happened to be a key to the fire escape. How incredibly lucky does Grace have to be to find that key in that place? But then the zombie cop is still coming after her, and he chases her up the stairs, which there they are. And she grabs a fire poker, and the game tells you to use the attack button to resist the zombie cop. However, whether or not you actually use the attack button in this scenario, it doesn't change the end of the scenario. Either way, you still put the fire poker through the zombie cop's eye. Which is creepy in how gory it kind of is, but it's just like, well, I have no player agency there. I did nothing, and I still got the zombie cop to be poked through. Why not give me some more agency? Make it so that I die or something if I do nothing. Or at least I lose some health. Make it so that I lose some health at least. But anyway, so Grace thinks that she killed the zombie cop, so she just throws away the fire poker. Which I'm just like, well, why are you throwing it away? You don't know if he's dead yet. stupid, Grace. And as it just so happens, he is not dead yet. And in fact, he bites through her shoulder. Or rather, not through, he bites into her shoulder. And then she really stumbles away now and goes up the stairs, and you're given back control, but you're giving control of Grace now, but there isn't really much you can do with her. All you can really do is run back up the stairs, which is, it goes over here, and then into the fire escape, because you now have that key, because it just so happened to be in that one jacket. How lucky of Grace. But anyway, you go in here, and the zombie cop comes after you, and you kind of tussle a little. Well, it's a cutscene, you can't really tussle, but Grace tussles with him, and she shoves him out a window, and now he's a dead zombie cop. And Grace is like, oh no, my wound, that stinks. Something I forgot to mention before is she does try to shoot him, but he knocks away her gun. So now, down here, there are 2 guns just lying on the ground, a shotgun and a pistol. So at this point, in my first playthrough, I'm like, Grace, you are safe now, we can go back down there, we can get a shotgun and a pistol. We're really rocking it with the weapons right now, but instead it's like, no, you can't go get down there. And I'm like, well, why not? And the game is like, well, it's a cutscene. And I'm like, well, but there's 2 guns down there. Let me get the 2 guns. But the cutscene is like, no, we will not let you. Even though Grace's life is in extreme danger, and there are 2 very good guns down there, you cannot get them, sadly. Instead, Grace sees a lamp on and is like, oh, there must be someone else here. And she goes up the fire escape into the upstairs. And one thing I might mention is it's very weird to lock a fire escape. Because, you know, fire escapes are meant for safety, you know, during a fire. So to lock a fire escape, I don't think that's very safe of you. But anyway, Grace goes up the stairs to the 3rd floor in this big room, and there's a zombie researcher man sitting in a chair who's looking away from her. And Grace has had several opportunities to run away at this point, so right now it's just survival of the fittest, and Grace is failing the survival of the fittest. With her brain, at least. So this zombie researcher man is Victor Gideon, and we'll learn later that he was a researcher on the T virus, which is the virus from the original Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3. And he says, Grace, it was such a hard thing looking for you, trying to get you to come here. And I'm just like, man, you had to be so lucky to actually get her to come up here, because first of all, you have no idea that even if they send an FBI agent to this murder scene, that it will be Grace. Because there are tons of FBI agents. Why do you think Grace would be sent here? Just because it's the hotel where her mother was murdered? In fact, I would think that would lead to them not wanting to send her here. But who am I to think about things? And then, beyond that, Grace could have been killed by the zombie cop, which, as we'll learn later, Gideon turned the cop into a zombie because he has little injections of T-virus on him. And I'm just like, well, you could have killed Grace right there. And as we'll see, Grace is the most important person to the villain's plans in the entire game. So having her die to a random zombie cop would really hamper those plans. And then it's like, well, even if she survived the zombie cop, there is no reason why you would think that she would even find the key to get up to this room, because the key was in some random jacket pocket on a random luggage cart. Sure, I guess if Grace was trapped in this hotel long enough, then she could have found her way up there, found the key and found her way up there. But come on, man, you're not very smart for a researcher of a virus, of a bioweapon. So anyway, the doctor, well, not doctor, but the researcher calls you the chosen one, which is such a it's such a good sign of good writing, isn't it? Calling the protagonist the chosen one. But anyway, someone then locks the door behind Grace. We're never told who does this or how it gets done. It's just someone locks the door behind her, and then the zombie researcher Gideon captures Grace and strangles her into a sleep. Makes her pass out. And I'm just like, well, wait a minute, he's a researcher. Why isn't he using morphine or something like that? Something that would lend more to his character. His character being a researcher man, a scientific man. Why aren't you leaning into his character and not just his size as this giant guy who can strangle people? And also, I feel like you would kill her by strangling her sooner than you would knock her out by strangling her. So it's just not a very good idea in the long run, either way. Any way about it is not a good idea. So anyway, now that Grace is not... I'm gonna get so much hatred for my use of anyway, my flagrant use of anyway. But anyway, we are now shown our second protagonist, because there's two of them. We get a whole two protagonists in this game. How fancy for this game that costs $70, giving us a whole two protagonists. But it's Leon. Leon is the second protagonist. If you don't know who Leon is, and you've played the series, you clearly have not played much of the series. So, Leon was in 2 and 4 and 6, and now he's also in 9. So, huzzah! He's a cool guy who is in the DSO, which is a government organization, which is like Department of Special Operations or whatever. And it was made in Resident Evil 6, or at least it was introduced there. But he's working for the DSO, and he is investigating a different murder scene. And this murder scene actually has tons of cops all over the place. And I'm just like, well, I wonder what happened to Grace's active crime scene, which had no cops or anything all over the place. But he's like, there's been a murder victim number 6 at this place called Elbridge. And I'm just like, oh, Elbridge, like Eldridge, like Eldridge Horror. How clever of them to have come up with that. But so Leon is like, there's this new victim, and they were all survivors of the Raccoon City outbreak, which was the outbreak in Resident Evil 2 and 3. If you don't remember, which if you're a fan of this series, you really, really should remember these things. Because that was a whole 2 games in the 9 games that we've had up till now in the main series. There have been actually more games in the side series that have taken place in Raccoon City. So if you're a fan of this series at all, then you should know what Raccoon City is. But all these murder victims are survivors of Raccoon City, and the person he's talking to in his earpiece is Sherry, who was a little girl who he saved back in Raccoon City, way back in Resident Evil 2, and Sherry in this game is some sort of government agent who I guess is working in the DSO, and I'm just like, man, Leon, that is so lucky of you to have such a kind of best friend, somehow just rising the ranks and getting into the same government agency that you got into. And as we'll see, his best friend here, or at least one of his friends, is able to do a lot for him as a government agent, but we'll get into that later. Just know that it's very, very lucky that one of Leon's best friends just so happened to get a job in a very powerful government agency. So Sherry tells Leon about Gideon, and then says that around the spot where the 5th murder victim was found, the cop from before, who we saw turn into a zombie, has gone missing, and we know he's dead, but they don't. So Leon is like, I'm gonna go check that out in Wrenwood. So he shows up on the scene, and then you would think that Gideon, being this highly smart researcher and all, would have a way to not get seen carrying Grace out of there, you know. He would have some sort of back alley plan where he could, like, go through this route to not get seen by anyone, but he just walks out onto the street carrying Grace. And I'm just like, man, why? That's so stupid. You're gonna get seen by everyone. But Leon sees him, because of course he sees him, and gets out of his car and starts walking towards him. And then Gideon smiles at the sight of Leon, even though later on we'll see that Leon has nothing to do with Gideon's plans. I guess he's just curious that Leon is there. Random people on the street start to notice Gideon, because of course they do, you stupid idiot. And Gideon is like, oh, Grace is fine, she's just resting, before he pulls out a gun that is loaded with little tranquilizer vials of T-virus, of zombie virus, and he shoots them from the gun into people, and then they start turning into zombies. And I'm just like, man, this scenario is so ridiculous. It's kind of like they want to be self-aware with how ridiculous it is, but from a storytelling perspective, this is just horrible. Like, what on earth were they thinking here? Gideon runs away while shooting all these people up with the zombie virus from his gun, his zombie virus gun. And then Leon runs after him, and now we get to start over here, kind of where Grace started, on the sidewalk, which I guess is kind of neat. Both of your protagonists start in the same place on the sidewalk, and Leon runs forward a bit this way. And then, oh no, a lady who's turning into a zombie kisses a guy for some reason. I have no idea why. And then she bites his nose and rips it off, and then Leon has to shoot her, because he's used to killing all these zombies before. And this is a good time to note that Leon's gameplay is much more complex than Grace's is so far. Grace pretty much did literally nothing gameplay-wise except for turn her flashlight on and be able to aim her gun but not shoot anything, because she's given 0 things to be able to shoot in that whole, like, half-hour to hour-long sequence. But Leon, he has a handgun. He has a Magnum revolver, which in Resident Evil games are the most powerful guns in the game. And he has an axe, and the axe can degrade with time, but you can just hold out the axe and hit the reload button. So you can reload your axe by sharpening it, and that will completely restore all of the axe's durability, which I'm just like, well, that's a little cheap, isn't it? I can just endlessly reload my axe. Well, but I'm just like, well, in Resident Evil 4 remake, that is, Leon could find these knives all over, and they had durability, and they could break. And it seems like they wanted to carry that over to this game with the axe, but then they were like, well, we don't want you to ever be in a scenario where you don't have the axe. So what if we can just let you endlessly resupply the durability of the axe? And I'm just like, well, that gets rid of the interesting gameplay of having to find a new melee weapon when your current one breaks. And the zombies in Leon's parts of the game can drop their weapons. So I'm just like, well, what if I'm scared that my weapon is gonna break, so then I pick up a zombie's weapon, and then I use that for my main weapon for a while, instead of having it so that I can just endlessly reload my axe. Or you could have it so that maybe the grindstones for the axe are these resources that you have to find throughout the world. But no, it's just, they just made it more basic for some reason. But another thing that Leon can do is once a zombie stumbles a bit, he can do a melee attack on them, which is 90% of the time just kicking them. But in Resident Evil 4 and Remake, the original and the remake, Leon could get behind a zombie and suplex them. Which, I have tested it out in this game, and sadly that is not present. Poor suplex, we will miss thee very sorrowfully. We will miss thee very much, suplex. Rest easy now. Sometimes it will prompt you with an axe prompt whenever a zombie stumbles, and when that happens, Leon can take his axe to an enemy and pop their head off. So it's kind of just an insta-kill. But not much story-wise happens for Leon in this segment. It's kind of just you... Where is it? There it is. You kind of just run down these streets, which... So, some parts of these streets, I've noticed, actually have invisible walls on them where you wouldn't think there would be. Like, over here, you would think that you could go into this section, but there's an invisible wall there that's blocking you off. And I'm just like, well, that's a normal part of the gameplay area. Why are you blocking that off for? I get blocking off parts that are not part of the gameplay, but why would you block off that section? That's very clearly in the bounds of the game. I don't get it. But anyway, Leon runs through here, he kills bunches of zombies, and sometimes they drop their weapon and you can pick it up and throw it at them. So that's fun. Leon is easily the more fun part of the game, by far. But you can also pick up items now, because you couldn't pick up any items as Grace, but Leon can pick up stuff. Sometimes there's items hidden in crates, or... later on in the game, there will be vases that hide weapons, or lockers, or glass cabinets. But you get through this whole horde of zombies, and you can use this Magnum revolver gun. In this game, it's called a Requiem, which the game is called Requiem. And for like 95% of the game, the only reason that you have to call the game Requiem is that this Magnum revolver is called Requiem in the game. But anyway, you get to the... You can use this revolver as much as you want here. You get 5 shots with it, and you can use it as much as you want. It does not matter how much you use it, which I will get into later as to why that is the case. But you run through the streets, you kill some zombies, and then you get to a cutscene. So in this cutscene, Leon loses Gideon, but is told that Gideon, after the fall of the Umbrella Corporation, who he worked for, by the way. He worked for Umbrella, the super evil... Basically, Umbrella was this super evil medicine company that was actually working on all these viruses underneath the surface. And they made a lot of the zombie viruses throughout the series. But he worked for Umbrella, and after Umbrella fell, he purchased a chronic care clinic for some reason. I guess so that he could continue his zombie experiments without being seen by much of the public. And then Leon, for some reason, takes off his glove and shows that his hand is rotting. He's gonna turn into a zombie before too long. And I'm just like, well, why did he take off his glove? And the only reason I can think of is he needed to show the audience that he was rotting and that he's trying to hide it. Because there is no real character or story reason for why he takes off his glove here. It's just like, oh, audience, you better think that I'm in danger, because I am. And despite there being this big zombie outbreak in Wrenwood, Sherry and Leon are not scared at all about a zombie outbreak happening in this city, and they're not even scared enough to warn anyone else in the government about this happening. And I'm just like, well, these people have gone through several zombie outbreaks before, so they should be terrified that zombies just popped up in Wrenwood, but they're just not. They're just like, well, this is just any other day. And I'm just like, come on, man. You've been through this too many times to not be scared of a zombie outbreak happening here. But anyway, something I like to touch on is that in Grace's gameplay, you're given pretty much no action, except for in the cutscenes, maybe, and in parts of the game where you're not really given much control over what happens. But in Leon's part of the gameplay, you're given tons of action. You can kick the zombies, you can shoot them, you can blast them open, and it's kind of just very jarring to go from little to no action to tons of action all at once, and as we'll see shortly, going back to almost no action again. And I kind of just feel like maybe these two should have been their own different game modes. Like, maybe at the start of the game, you could pick whether you wanted to play as Grace or Leon. Because this series has done that before, where you could choose which protagonist you want to play as, such as in Resident Evil 2, or Resident Evil 5, or Resident Evil 6. They've done this before, so there is just no reason why they couldn't do this here. But I guess they wanted the story to just flow in a certain way, and by doing that, they were like, well, let's have you swap between drastically different gameplay styles, and hopefully it'll work out by the end. But anyway, that will be the end of part 1 of this series, and yes, this will be a series. I want to cover kind of one massive chunk of the game at a time, so there will be at least 7 more parts to this series as far as I'm thinking of it. And so I'm gonna split Rhodes Hill into 3 sections: above ground, underground, and outside. And then I'm gonna split Raccoon City into 2 sections, which will be the first section where you're looking for the bomb, and then the second section where it's the RPD. And then you will have one video for the lab at the end of the game, and then one video going over all of the post-game stuff that you can do after you beat the game for the first time. But as for now, that is pretty much it, and hopefully this came out very coherently. Have a nice day, fellow persons. I'm gonna go have a Pringle. You thought I was kidding.